Welcome back to EduTech 2020, presented by Niti Aayog's Atal Innovation Mission, IAMAI, Zendesk, and National Skill Development Corporation. Our next session is an interesting panel discussion on reskilling teachers for Gen Z. I would like to introduce you to the moderator, Ms. Meenakshi Oberoi, founder and CEO, D Pedagogics, and our esteemed panelists, Dr. Sibaram Khara, Vice Chancellor, Sharda, Ms. Nishigandha Palshikar, Head of Education at Plesmo, Mr. Kim Sabria, co-founder and CEO at Edpuzzle Inc., Rita Sonawat, Director, Early Childhood Education, Ampersand, and Ms. Farida Bhavani, Founder, Chryselect Education Solutions. Welcome, everyone. I would now request Ms. Oberoi to take over.
Thank you so much. And thank you, first of all, for inviting us over here. And I'm really happy and proud to be a part of this whole discussion. This is an important charter that we are going to take on today, and I will be leading the discussion with all our esteemed panelists, and I will be talking everyone about reskilling teachers for Gen Z. I just want to take you back a little bit where we started talking about, reskilling with the McKinsey report in 2017 telling us that with the increase in automation, about 60 million to 375 million individuals around the world may need to transition from their occupational categories by 2030. So nearly all the jobs that involve a shift, in the kind of skill sets that are required, the tasks are going to be different, activities are going to be different. So today we stand at a place where OCED again in 2018 brought to our notice, and Dr. Skelder actually gave us a wake-up call by saying that we've grown into our comfortable zone now with so many things, and in schools we teach people our truth of today rather than helping them question the established wisdom of our times, to think forward, to anticipate, be open with the novelty, and we have a consumer attitude to education rather than a contributor, or rather than being a contributor. Working and learning needs to become more integrated, and we have taken cognition in pockets of all the findings of all the research that has happened over the years, and we are in a space where we have started talking about the word reskilling. I would like to open this forum today with a very quick 2 minute, less than 2 minute actually, conversation about the word reskilling to set the context. So I'm going to invite each of my panelists to please share their perspective in about 30 seconds, or a splash of a few words, or just about a sentence about what do you mean by the word reskilling? What does it mean to you? I'll invite you to please go ahead and, Dr. Rita, let's start with you, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Meenakshi. Uh, First thing, I like the title reskilling. So we believe that teachers have skills. So that is something very nice, and that is what I really liked. And so now we are talking about reskilling. So here, first is see that there are three areas where the skillings are required. One is the learning skills, second is the life skills, and third is the literacy skills. So if these three areas if we cover, then we can cover the holistic picture of the skilling. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Nishi, take it away. You're on my screen, please.
All right. So, according to me, in my domain, which is technology education, so it's really not ed tech; it's actually tech ed. Reskilling might not just always be need of a single jump in learning something new. It's almost like a mindset that you have to adapt to as an educator, because and I'll elaborate more when we, of course, talk about it much more in context. But according to me, reskilling is not just learning a new skill. That is, of course, one of the things that you have to do at that point, but also to integrate it as a mindset as an educator.
Wonderful. Farida, please go ahead.
Thanks, Meenakshi. So yes, when you talk about reskilling, and me coming from an early childhood background where actually, when you look at teachers in our segment, now that the NAP calls it the foundational years, there is no level playing field wherein teachers join the early childhood sector. So you could do a 3-month course or even a 3-year bachelor's, and you can still be a teacher. So when you're looking at reskilling or upskilling, what is the baseline that we're looking at? And another thing that I want to talk about is the fact that the schooling that we as teachers, I mean, we as learners have received, uh, when it comes to us being teachers, it is not the same model that we can fall back on. Because when we look at the education that we have received, we must have, or we still have come from an aggregator or content aggregator, purview. And when we're looking ahead, and you rightly said, the jobs that we have today who will not be there by the time these children finish the education. So we're looking at getting these children to have more habits of mind. So then when we look at upskilling and reskilling, how will these teachers be skilled to create habits of mind in our children? So, two things I want to talk about: reskilling vis a vis habits of mind. And the other one is, I still walk into classrooms where teachers talk about 2 and 3 is 23, and thinking that that's the way to teach place value, because they don't have a level playing field when it comes to the teacher training as such. So, yeah, these are the two things.
Farida, that's a wonderful start. Kim, you're here. So let's get your perspective on this. Are you here?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My perspective is not from tech ed, but from ed tech. So for me, reskilling, I would say it's adjusting, improving, flexibility. I would say those are the words that resonate more with me when it comes to reskilling. I also believe that now it's a wake-up call for many teachers. The current situations have pushed teachers to rethink education. And with this change and this idea of rethinking education, it comes adjusting as an individual to give the better to our students. Teachers have always been adjusting. I think reskilling is part of a teacher's job. Obviously, it's a skill that is necessary for other jobs, as the panelists have mentioned, but especially for teachers having to adjust to every student every day, every year, every family, every context you work in. I think it's the skill that teachers are prepared, and they just need to keep working on it and developing it.
Awesome. That sounds great. Dr. Sivaram, if you're around, may I have your word on this, please? So you're on mute. If you could please unmute yourself. Okay, I see him in the audience, but we don't hear him. I'm going to wait for about less than a minute. If not, I'm going to go ahead and open this forum to the thought that we have actually, covered and agreed upon as a group to discuss. Dr. Sivaram, are you here? Okay, so the thought that we have is that the myriad or radical changes to our lives, which Kim was referring to, have impacted the way we teach and learn. Thus, reskilling is not a choice and is an imperative now more than ever before. So, if that's an imperative, how can we, bring about reskilling? What can we talk about the reskilling of teachers to train the Gen Z? So, my first question is going to be about about, let's say, what is the kind of change that we have seen. So for many years, we've been speaking about the necessary skills for teaching students, but less spoken about are the skills necessary for learning in education. So what are the top few skills in your list? I'll invite each of the panelists to please go one by one. I would not want to call out the names, but I would just say that, go ahead and take the floor to help us understand what are the top few skills on your list as a leader or policymaker in your institute, or even a solution provider, and have those skills changed over the last few years, let's say 10 years, 3 years, 5 years. Have you seen any change in the skill sets, or are they still the same?
Okay. So
Anyone?
can I take?
Absolutely. Dr. Rita, go ahead, please.
Okay, so what I'm seeing, because I have a long experience working in the field of education. So if I go 10 years, 5 years, and 3 years, that timeline, if I take 10 years before, when we are teaching, mostly we used to take audiovisual aids in the classroom, or OHP was there, transparencies were there. We used to make the transparency and use the OHP to teach the students. And when it comes to the project, also the project used to be very contextualized, and very small project we used to give to the students, where we thought the money is a very big constraint. And when we used to think about the educational trip, always it used to be like a historical place, or it was always learning related educational trip. So that kind of skills we have inculcated in Gen Z. But if I see 5 years line, then the scenario has changed. The classroom has got LCD projector, and PPTV has started using YouTube. We have downloaded and shown to the students. A lot of case studies have come in the classroom. So the skills are really improved in these 5 years, I can say. And then it comes to the 3 years, last 3 years, the major change which I have seen is the zero lecture classroom. Now students, they really don't want you to come and give lectures, but what they want is have a discussion, have a dialogue, have a debate, and multiple choice questions. Some crosswords we are bringing in the classroom and asking students to fill. So more of the involvement they want in the classroom, activity-based classroom, hands-on experience, and practical-based education. So this is the students, they really want to engage in the classroom rather than passive learner. So for that, I can see a lot of skills we have learned. That's the reason I said it's good we have taken the topic as a reskilling, because these skills slowly we have developed, and we have reached to this level where we can have a zero lecture classroom in the for the this generation. So I'll stop here, but later on, maybe when we talk about what are the skills required to have a zero lecture classroom, we will discuss later on.
Absolutely. Dr. Rita, I completely agree with you that student engagement has increased in the classroom. Methodology or the pedagogical changes have started setting in, and beautiful base for that. Nishi, you were about to say something. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, like I mentioned, the whole idea of reskilling, according to me, especially in context of technology education, is adopting it as a mindset shift as an educator, believing that always learning something new so that you can bring something relevant to your student is very important, because technology is fast paced and constantly changing. So the responsibility of the educator is not just to impart knowledge about tools, but also to make sure that they are always relevant in terms of the current context, which means that you have to adopt this as a mindset. It's not a single activity. And once you do that, in a way, you are in the shoes of your learner who is trying to prepare for a future that looks very different from the present. And then you're in a very good position to imbibe the same culture, right? That's what we want students to do. We don't want them to learn just what is being taught in the curriculum, but the ability to keep learning newer things using the same principles as a foundation. So that, according to me, is fundamental as a skill, I think, that is important for an educator so much more than ever. I mean, there are all these short-term changes that we have to reskill ourselves for. We have to bring a great mode of blended learning, even in technology education, on and off screen learning, and yet in an online environment effectively. That is like the need of the hour, temporary reskill. But the mindset is the long-term thing.
I'll take mindset and mindfulness from you, Nishi, over here, as those two are the key factors of what you spoke about. This really came in, Farida. Please go ahead.
I know I loved the word mindset, Nishi. And you know what I want to also pitch in is, so I've been mentoring a few teachers, and we're all, figuring out how to get this blended learning up and going with our children in our classrooms. And the teachers, as teachers, we need to, figure out is, if you just type the word face value, on YouTube, you'll get 100 videos. Now, as a teacher, you have the content knowledge to be able to know what is the video that I want to choose from, because and it's not necessarily only related to content savviness or content expertise. It's also about having the ability to sieve in what is really relevant and what I need to give back to my children. So that is something that I really want my teachers to have, a skill to be able to sieve out what is important and relevant in the context of imparting education. The other thing that I want to talk about is, having a view of how do I view my children. We have come from a schooling where children have been viewed as containers and vessels to be filled. And if you look at, say, a Reggio inspired or the other ways in which education is getting reformed, the view of the child is a very capable child. And how are we as teachers going to impact the learning of these children who are, who we believe are indigenously capable themselves? So, yeah, that is something that I think as teachers, we really need to kind of put our act together. And therefore, when we are even creating content, we have to keep this in mind.
Fabulous. I think I'll take those two from you, staying relevant and, the way you want teachers to be mindful about what they're doing. So it's beautiful how you're binding the first two, speakers between Dr. Rita and Nishikenda. And Kim, thank you so much for being so patient. And I know, even Dr. Sibaram is here. So Kim, I'll let you go first, and then probably I'll invite Dr. Sibaram as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. So in my opinion, the skills necessary for learning in education, so I'm going to focus more on the student side. In my opinion, learning how to learn. So we have mentioned a couple of times in this panel that keeping this mindset of keep learning is very important. But as well, I think it's very important to teach the student or help the student discover what is the best way to learn from them. It can be a video, it can be a book, it can be learning from a person, it can be learning by doing. So I think it's very important to help the student discover what is the best way to learn for them. I think this skill is very important nowadays because, as we know, society is changing very rapidly, especially the past months. So the only way to adapt and adjust is by being able to constantly keep learning. I think Nishi has said it perfectly. This mindset is extremely important. And when it comes to the different ways of learning, I think video, and it has been mentioned a couple of times, YouTube has revolutionized the past 10 years. We are able to search anything and learn anything in seconds. So one search and we have 10,000 or 1 million different teachers at our disposal. So I think it's very important to teach our students not just how to search, but how to learn from a video. It's not the same to watch a video for entertainment or to listen to a song than to learn order of operation, for example. Those are two different skills. And I think it's very important that we teach our students as well how to absorb information from videos. That's my opinion.
Thanks, Kim. You had shared that with me over your mail as well, that you've emphasized upon the use of videos. It's quite an interesting, actually, perspective, and I'm going to come back to you in about my next round, possibly. So I'm taking the key takeaways from you would be, for me, would be, the personalized education and inclusion, basically trying to reach out to the last learner possible. And trying to make it your way rather than just one size fits all. I think we also have Dr. Sivaram here. Dr. Sivaram, if you can please unmute yourself to speak. I got a message that you are very much here. Okay. I'm sorry if I'm missing you. Are you trying to say something? I think what we can do is all of us can try going on mute. Maybe then it'll give him a better, maybe better space. If we can just mute ourselves, please. Dr. Sivaram, did it help you? We'll continue. So let's come to something that is extremely important, and that is to have a strategic plan for reskilling. So I'm going to move on to strategic planning, and I'm going to request you to please, shed light on, the strategic plan. It is important to understand the social, cultural, political, regulatory, environmental and economic factors influencing reskilling. So, what measures must be taken to bridge the divide? Because we cannot deny that there is a skill gap out there. And how do we actually overcome the challenges that we are facing owing to all these factors? This could include just any specific area that in your field or in your experience you would come across, and how have you overcome that? If you can share that with a larger audience, because there are many people who would be facing or must be in similar circumstances, and it just helps them get a perspective.
Okay. So I'll give you some examples here because maybe we can understand through example how it works. Since I'm working with the M% group, and recently Jammu and Kashmir government has decided to start a preschool program in a school. And the government teachers, those who are teaching in the high schools, they have become a preschool teachers. So the training was very, very important here. So in lockdown period, the government has thought of giving the training. So 30 hours training was given online to them. It was part of the training was online and part of the training was face to face. So 30 hours was online and 5 days, each day 8 hours was a face to face training. So like this, we have conducted for the Jammu teachers and separately for the Kashmir teachers. So you will be surprised here because the problem there, they have only 2G. And with 2G to do online, it was a really tough task. But one can see the motivation of the teacher to learn. So they have like night time, 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, when nobody is using, that time they used to get a good bandwidth, so they could do the assignments. So like this, they have worked very hard. And when we are giving face-to-face also, so whatever the material we have shown them, they wanted to have material, they read the material. We have the pre-test, post-test, their feedback. So everything we have done very scientifically. And this training was very well appreciated. So this is one example I will give you, because sitting in Bombay and giving the whatever the experience we have from the Bombay school and the whole body of knowledge in early childhood education has reached to a very high level, and where they are starting. If they start with this knowledge, I'm sure they will be going long way. That is one example. And the second example I want to give is a ICDS program, which is a flagship program of Government of India. So Nasik is 200 kilometers away from Mumbai. So 25 Anganwadi was given to us by the government of Maharashtra. It was a pilot project, and in this project, what the company has done is these 25 teachers have got the laptops, and you will be surprised that the teachers first time they have plugged in the laptop, and they used to say delete is like a rubber. So that kind of knowledge, language they have given to the keyboard. And in 5 days, it was possible for them to use the LMS, take out the lesson plan, and in the lesson plan, if videos are there, to show the video. So to how to run the whole LMS. So day wise, we have given them the plan, and we ask them, whenever you want to have your activity, you can have your activity also. So it's not like this is the support we are giving you, but it's not compulsorily used this way only. And in 1 year, they have shown a beautiful result, I can say. So what technology we're saying is we need to reach out to the masses. If we cannot, so the idea here, what we had as a group is 25 Anganwadi we can showcase to the government with the PPP model, and then they can ask us to give training to many teachers. But like you have said, it's always a very slow process, and how to go with the masses. That we have to take a really fast decision, because there is no time now, and we are missing on the timeline. So to take fast decision, when shown the pilot, somebody should be immediately take the decision. That is what I submit. So it's possible to do with the government.
Definitely it is, and it is all about being human. And I first want to congratulate you on such beautiful amplified projects. These are ambitious and dream to accomplish, really. And also, what I would want to bring in here is that the kind of areas that you're talking about, I would totally vouch for that, because we've been working with Jammu and Kashmir and northeastern states. There, teachers are going to find their way of reaching out to their students. Just give technology in their hands, they will find it. Our teachers have even uploaded their videos in OneDrive and sent out the link to that drive via SMS, because again, 2G works, like you said. So there are ways and means that can be found if we have the right way to move forward. Fortunately, I think I have Dr. Sivaram here. May I please request you?
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are very much.
I'm very sorry because my MacBook was not working perfectly.
Not a problem.
Thankful and good afternoon to everybody. And
I'll request you to please go ahead and share your thoughts.
Yeah, I wanted to say a few words that this generation Z, actually they are surrounded by a lot of technology, knowledge networks, and those networks are very abrupt and disruptive in nature, with a lot of contents. So there is a challenge, because there are certain good content, certain authentic contents. But anyway, more or less in different form, the knowledge is available. So they are surrounded by knowledge sea. So the resources will be ebooks, YouTube, e-content, and PPT, journal, audio, website, blog, Google. So these are the things are available. Now, here we need to understand one thing, that what methodology the student favor for mode of content delivery by the teacher, because they are seeing many things and they are surrounded by many lectures and teachers, online teaching, learning, pedagogy tools and other things. So they are very well in positions to compare their conventional teaching or their regular teaching learning happening inside the campus. Therefore, the teacher has tremendous responsibility, otherwise challenges, to upgrade and upskill, because their lecture materials and content delivery methods should not be in quality aspects less than what is available in the net. Otherwise, student will lose the interest. So that is one thing. And while actually the faculty members or teachers will content the delivery. Either nowadays it is online or offline, and if it is online, and we know that there should be certain changes in methods of instructions, so that they can engage the students very meaningfully and effectively. However, if we talk about the conventional teaching learning, that is offline teaching learning, now here comes the content delivery and pedagogy. How well the methods of instructions and content delivery methods with the pedagogical tools can be embedded in his content delivery, that is very, very important, so that students will be attracted and students will be engaged in the live class very effectively and impactfully. So whether we use the flipped class, classrooms, group discussion, seminar, quiz, assignments, project-based learnings, or some prototype demonstrations or showcase some of the equipments, video, animations. So nothing, no unique things will work out in one class. So based on the contents, the faculty members need to make a very active content delivery plan. That is the biggest challenge, in current education system. And we are also exploring with the faculty members, and we are seeing this is the one area where the teachers and there is a big gap, the generation gap. The teachers also, we have teachers those who have studied in 70s, 80s, and 90s, and whereas these generation we are talking about from 2000 to say 2010 or 20, and now those who are studying in this system, basically they are 90 or 2001. So the age groups of 15 to 20, or in higher study we can go up to 22, like that. So the teachers, they have learned their they have learned from their gurus previously, and they were not surrounded by these very disruptive methods, or there's the knowledge, the very density of knowledge available in different forms. So that scenario was not there. Now, third thing is that the type of notes, that also faculty need to work out, because students will be preferring which kind of material, lecture materials we will be giving to the students. We are taking the classes inside the class, and that too, time limit is there. With that time limit, how much pedagogical tools, and then you can prepare your lecture and you can effectively deliver entire content, because you have to cover the syllabus also. So now lecture materials, whether it will be handwritten, or it will be typed, or video or audio, text, or any other things, that effectively to be measured, that after giving the materials, whether students are really benefited and they're liking it, and then maybe effective feedback system should be there, where we can assess the quality of the materials, and then it is liked and actually it is used by the students. Otherwise, if faculty members or teachers give that kind of very casual lecture material, although they are delivering well in the classroom, but students will like to prefer, sorry, to see their content when they are at home, or in the when they are preparing. And if they see that these materials are not as per the quality available in the net, then they will lose the interest towards the teacher. So these are few fundamental things are there. We need to work out, and teachers have tremendous challenges in this generation of study and teaching learning process. Fourth thing is that assessment method. Now the conventional assessment method so far widely used is either we give quiz and some continuous assessment, and then one term examination, then end term examinations, and laboratory, all those things are there. But now n number of active tools are there, assessment tools are there. Our purpose will be to evaluate the learning outcome of the student. So for not necessarily that conventional evaluation method or assessment methods will be used, we can engage the students in the assessment method, so that we appropriately learn, and students are willing to participate and demonstrate their skills actually they have learned. That is very, very important. It may be role play, maybe acting, maybe even real time some activities, or any other type of group discussion, any other type of things. So that n number of assessment tools are available. I need to devise a very solid assessment method, and there also a lot of works are there and challenges are there. So we need to work out that. So these are the few challenges are there in the teaching learning process, so far as the generation Z students are concerned. But what are the students know, faculty members are know to do is that they have to be very technology enabled person, technology competent teacher, as somebody was telling. And we have a lot of technology available which are to be used in teaching learning, including evaluations. Now we need to have some kind of skills to use that very effectively, and because we have to use appropriately and we manage the time also. And then of course the modern tools and industry exposure should be there, so that whatever we teach, the students should be competent enough to bring his theory and connect with the real-time system or real life problems, and so that students think something to identify certain problems. So students has to be faculty have to be experts in exposure to the modern tools and industry. Of course, pedagogy and impactful teaching learning I have covered. One important thing is that now students are coming diversified attitudes and behavior skills. If we want to improve that, then faculty members also need to have that attitudes and behavioral skills, and then to handle different kinds of students, that is very important. Also, the faculty members should have the capability to manage the personal issues and relationships, and so they'll be very efficiently and effectively connected with the students. But connection is the major problem currently, because outside the classrooms we are not faculty members are not well connected, although we are putting our emphasis, but things are not happening too much. But challenges are there, we need to be, specifically in pandemic we are seeing. Then happiness and wellness, despite all the odds, the teachers they are working, because teaching is a very noble profession. We know that beside teaching learning, we need to run big system, as well as we have to content creation, as well as research and projects and all those things. So teachers has lot of work, unlike other professions. So your wellness and happiness will be very, very important, so that positive thinking is maintained, and faculty members or teachers should be very enthusiastic and engaged, as national education policy is emphasizing, and thereby they will be channelizing their positive energy and leading to very productive and high performing faculty, and that by that the students will be benefited. And of course, one more aspect will be there. Now teachers should play the role of mentors or facilitator, rather than one very strict guru and just content delivery. So that thing is very, very important. But one thing quickly I want to say also few things, that despite all these expectations from the teachers, and the institutes or university or schools, whatever it is, the institutions should also maintain certain things. Recruitment policy should be one of the thing which is in education policy emphasized, that we have to recruit the competent teachers by proper test, and those who are passionate in teaching and they want to make a very long-term career in the teaching professions. And then to motivate them, incentive, awards, recognitions, increments, and then promoting them to the leadership and picking up the appropriate leaders to manage the academic system. And performance
stop you there.
should be very strong, and institute ambience and facility support should be there. So thank you very much with these few words. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wanted to stop you there and catch your thought and give it to Farida, because she has something valuable to add over there. But thank you for providing us the view of other spectrum from Dr. Rita. So Farida, please take it away. I think you have something interesting to contribute out there.
Thanks, Meenakshi. Yes, so many points have been discussed till now. I want to kind of, summarize this in two ideas or two thoughts. One is access, and the other one is application. So like we don't have a homogeneous crowd of children. I mean, we don't have a community of children that have access to everything. So it's the same with our teachers. We have teachers who are still in our 2-tier and 3-tier cities who may not have access to, technology like Screen Classify or Seesaw or all these apps, and they may not even know how to use them. So how then are you going to upskill or reskill these teachers? when we talk about reskilling and upskilling these kind of teachers, you're looking at two major mountains that you want to address. One is getting them technology savvy, and the other is getting them, getting them present to the shift in the education framework, the education, the view of education that is changing dramatically in today's times. The other one that I want to talk about, so that's access, and the other one I want to talk about is applicability. So even when we're looking at upskilling and reskilling our teachers, is the content that I'm going to be giving out in my workshop, in my session, is she going to be able to use that in a small town Kadalur where all her children don't even have the family shares one gadget? So how is this going to be applicable to that child, to that family? So I think as institutions, as communities, we need to, whatever program that we develop, we need to keep in mind who are we targeting and how is this going to be applicable. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, because we have Nishi, who just provided me a great solution yesterday, and she was telling me that she was training about 4,000 teachers in a go. So I asked a similar question to her, and in our conversation, she did bring it up. So Nishi, take it away and please share with us how do you make it happen, and then we'll take it to Kim to give us a perspective, a global perspective on this as to how do they deal with these kind of issues. Do they even face such challenges? And I'm sure they do. It's just not an Indian context. It's a global context that we're talking about. So Nishi, please take it away.
Yeah. No, I love the discussion, the way it is flowing till now, because I'm going to build a little bit on what both Mr. Sivaram-Khara and what Farida has just said. One is about being teachers reskilling themselves, not just to learn a new skill as a tick mark, but actually to ramp up to a quality where they can match the content that they are giving out with the content that is really engaging for their students, keeping in mind how much knowledge is already available. And second, accessibility is the concern, right? Like Farida mentioned, how do you make sure? So I was, like we were speaking yesterday, it was an amazing experience. And we had close to 4,000 teachers who were learning from across the country how to code and how to develop mobile apps. And they had been coding and they have all these issues, everything that we all just talked about. Yes, I mean, you can imagine, right, what a cross section it was. And this was our second cohort. And I have seen two very important things that I think can help bridge such divides. The first thing is to ensure that we give extremely high quality training to our teachers. And when I say high quality training, Kim, I'm refer to what you just said. The way students learn in so many different ways, even for teachers to learn when they are trying to reskill themselves, it has to be made personally meaningful to them, more relevant to them when they are reskilling. So I believe in hands-on learning for teachers. I think that builds a lot of confidence when they're trying to learn something new, and resources also might be limited. And the second is, when we provide them high quality training, we then actually keep supporting them as a community so that it becomes a continual process, because having this community where you are sharing how they are being able to learn that, take whatever they have learned and apply it, that's where you really gain so much insight from multiple people. So I think, high quality training is a great enabler to bring this in action, and then to make sure that we can bridge all these other divides, right? I think that specifically in case of technology education, right? It's a technical field. I think first of all, you need technology platforms that themselves support multiple languages and content that also has multiple language support in it. And both of these are very important because they are very powerful enablers and of quality. You learn so much better in a language that you understand well. And again, I want to draw on Kim's suggestion of being personally meaningful to you. So I think, these, according to me, high quality training and continuous community support is something that I think is going to help bring a lot of factors out which will bridge a lot of these gaps that are there and these disconnects that are.
I think it's beautifully, organically just coming out to be a common factor, inclusion and accessibility both. So Kim, take it away. Let's hear from you and let's get a global perspective from you on this.
Yes, so I loved all the ideas that have been mentioned. I think it's very true. We are helping millions and millions of students and teachers around the world. And I'm going to say that everything starts, and I want to rescue this idea, everything starts with the mindset of the teacher. So the context in different countries, I would say even in different schools. You can be in India in a fantastic school with internet, all the students have devices at home, but then 2 blocks away you have a school that has no access to internet and students do not have access to internet at home. So I'm going to say that from a global perspective, what has surprised to me is that the common factor is the mindset of the teacher. So once the teacher has accepted and realized that in order to help the students develop these skills, the teacher needs to learn, the teacher needs to introduce new things in the classroom, that's when change starts to happen. And that's when we start closing the gap. We have mentioned accessibility if we talk about technology, but I want to rescue all technology, books. It's a fantastic tool that works offline perfectly. So having students learn on their own through books can be an alternative if your students do not have access to internet. Another way, if you really want to use technology, like in my case when I was a teacher, is to try to find allies. The school can provide internet. The public library in the community can provide internet. You can work with the government to try to find resources for the families. Work with companies that maybe they can provide old laptops to give to the student. So once the teacher has changed the mindset, that can drive the change in the student, in the classroom, so that the students can really develop this skill. And I don't want to say it's just technology and internet, which obviously is a very powerful tool, but there are other powerful tools that once the teacher decides how to use them, can have a very strong impact.
Wonderful. We have a few minutes to go, and I have an important question that has just popped up now. I would love to read it out to you and leave it for any one of you to answer it in just about 1 minute. That's the challenge. This is going to be a jam session. I'm going to ask multiple questions, and I will request any one of you to please jump in to answer. So one of the questions that we have is, while we expect teachers to be supportive of their students, these times call for a mutual understanding where students appreciate their teachers trying to adopt new and initially uncomfortable ways of teaching. How do we make students more empathetic? Anybody?
Okay, then I can say it is very, I can say in one word, if both of them, they can be a co-learner in today's time, student and teacher together. So that can do wonders. That is what I think.
Thank you, Dr. Rita. That was perfect. The next question here is, how can the standards of Farida, this could be for you. So how can the standards of quality education be redefined with a fundamental change in teaching style during this time? We've been talking about quality in education. So there you go. You have that question there. Farida, you're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we talk a lot about, teaching styles as well as learning styles. And one thing that, comes to my mind is, wouldn't it be fascinating to be able to figure something out on your own? And it's like when I see my daughter, play with the puzzle and having her figure it out on her own, she gets that aha moment. That is the idea of a constructivist approach. And that is something that, I would possibly recommend to even, a teaching style or a teaching methodology to teach teachers. Why do we need to give things on a platter to teachers when we expect them to follow a very different model of teaching for our children?
True.
So what would that mean then?
So, I would just add over there by saying that, when we expect our students to get the scores, so putting in a quality measure and asking our teachers to score at least 80%, if not more, is not a big demand, right? Fantastic and fabulous conversations here. I wish I had more time on hand to really carry on these conversations, but I hope that our audience have had some key takeaways from over here. What I want to really put together is that we used to learn to do the work, but now learning has become the work. So if you're learning, that's reskilling. And we have to play the role and be more effective actors and promoters of this change and adopters. So I'm going to wrap up this session by giving one more buzzword here, and that is upskilling along with reskilling. And I'll request my esteemed panel to please just give me one word. What do you mean by upskilling? One word, upskilling. Dr. Sibaram, let's start with you. One word.
The skilling include skilling the upgrading and reskilling the knowledge and skills, and then pedagogical tools.
Perfect. Farida, how about you? Upskilling. One word for upskilling. What do you mean? What comes to your mind when I say upskilling?
Hello. Yes, for me, would be an amalgamation of pedagogy and technology.
Perfect. Nishi, how about you?
I think, upskilling, according to me, is this very exciting and energizing thing, because I think I associate it with making room in our minds for something new and also unlearning something, which is an exciting process by itself. So.
Perfect. Dr. Rita, how about you? Upskilling.
Upskilling, I personally feel we need to have a current technology awareness. Unless we are into it, we will be nowhere in education system.
Perfect. Kim, how about you? Upskilling.
Me, upskilling is improving.
Thank you. That was actually one word. Thank you so much. So, yes, we should not be trying to substitute anything here. Being human, I think the teacher needs to keep the human touch, even if it is technology or artificial intelligence which is coming in. It can force you to think harder and think from different perspectives. But basically, being human is one thing that will not go out, and the human skills shall remain. And only reskilling and upskilling can help us move further. Thank you so very much, all of you, for your time and wonderful thoughts. I'm absolutely delighted and honored to have you all on this panel and have this great discussion with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Meenakshi, on behalf of all the panelists, thank you so much for driving the discussion.
That was surely an interesting discussion. Thank you, dear panelists, for taking time out to join us today. I would also like to thank our valued partners, Zendesk, Amazon Web Services, Dell Technologies, PayPal,